Candidate Zoran Mamdani is campaigning on a promise to improve the housing affordability crisis in the city, but the methodology is up for debate. Someone who knows a lot about this here now, Shaun Donovan, CEO of Enterprise Community Partners, a nonprofit aimed at increasing housing supply and advancing equity. He also served as HUD Secretary under President Obama, I knew him then, and the Commissioner of the New York City Department of Housing and Preservation and Development. I didn't realize you did that prior to being HUD Secretary, 2009 to 2014. Welcome, Shaun. It's Mr. I still should call you that, I guess, Mr. Secretary.
Shaun is just great.
Shaun
Thank you.
Good.
It's great to be back. Good to see you.
It's tough. Housing affordability, housing supply. I'm not going to say that, wow, you've had, 16 years of being intimately involved and we're no better off. It's not your fault. You're still plugging away, are you not?
We absolutely are. But the problem is, and I think that's true of this election in New York, we call it an affordability election. It was a housing election. I think it's true of our election. Donald Trump was elected because we had an inflation problem. That was a housing problem. Our inflation problem was a housing problem the last few years. And so this is a problem that is driving elections. I would even argue it's the #1 issue, housing affordability in America.
And then you take Manhattan. There's no solution to affordable housing.
Well, here's what's interesting is we're now seeing bipartisan, at a time of hyperpartisanship, we are seeing more and more bipartisanship around building more housing. We are 7 million units short in housing in this country, and places are starting to build more. You even saw California recently say they're going to wipe out the Environmental Quality Act if you're building affordable housing. So that is starting to make a real difference. Prices are coming down in places that are building more housing. And that's what we need to do here in New York and across the country.
Well, I want you to tell me what Enterprise, because you work in 3 different areas, I know, but is this low-income housing tax credit program key in your view?
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the things we don't talk enough about in the bill that just went through Congress, the reconciliation bill, the one big beautiful bill, as people call it, there was the biggest increase we've ever seen in the low-income housing tax credit.
Democrats never say that.
Well,
so it was a good thing. You're happy about that.
On housing, it was a really important step, and it was highly bipartisan. And here's the thing.
How was it bipartisan when they didn't get a single Democrat vote?
Well, there were a few other things in the bill you might have noticed that weren't so popular.
I understand, but you don't be throwing that bipartisan word around when they didn't.
Right. But here's the interesting thing, that we talk about this problem in New York. We talk about it in the big cities. Rents are rising the fastest in Idaho, in Wyoming, in red states. And we're seeing more and more Republican governors, Democratic governors come together to say, we need to build more housing. Part of that is getting government out of the way. We've got to have less regulation. We've got to allow bigger buildings. We've got to go faster. We've got to have fewer ways to stop things getting built. We just had a City of Yes proposal in New York that went through last year that's going to make a big difference. We have to do that. We also have to invest more. And the low-income housing tax credit is the single most successful way to do that we've seen. That's
a good way, and it's a public-private thing. It can lead to that anyway. I said to you, this makes my head explode, freeze the rent. So that is a slogan that we're hearing, and maybe what got Mamdani elected. When you freeze the rent, if the rent doesn't pay for the upkeep of the building, it invariably happens that either there's no supply left or it's just run down and can't be maintained. What did you tell me? It's not a solution, it's a slogan?
It's a slogan, it's not a solution. But let's be clear. We have over half of New Yorkers paying more than they can afford when they're renting. And on average, those renters are paying $1,000 a month more than they can afford. No wonder they're angry. And in the short run, freezing the rent might help a few folks. But what it doesn't do is solve the bigger problem, right? We need to build hundreds of thousands more units in New York. We need 7 million more units nationally. And so we have to find ways to build more and invest more. And that's really what's going to solve the problem.
So Enterprise is totally a 501c3?
Well, we're a very interesting organization. We're the largest nonprofit in the country working on housing. We helped create the low-income housing tax credit. We invest about $10 billion a year. And I want to be clear, for your audience, this is a huge opportunity. If we can build these 7 million more units, investors can get significant tax breaks through the low-income housing tax credit. They can meet ways to invest in their communities, to meet their social goals. So it's a very big opportunity for the private sector as well.
And we should be clear, Freeze the Rent is specifically for rent-stabilized apartments. So it helps us it would help, in theory, a small fraction of New Yorkers. Have you talked to Mamdani?
I've had a brief conversation with him during the campaign about it. And look, as you said, I ran housing in the city under Mayor Bloomberg. I think all New Yorkers need to come together and solve this problem. And we need to work together on bipartisan solutions that can get it done.
You don't endorse people? You don't look in absolute horror at the possibility of New York moving into a socialist?
I run a 501c3 that is not partisan. You're going
to punt on that?
Look, but again, the big picture point here, Joe, is if we don't solve this housing problem, we are going to keep having. Donald Trump was elected on housing.
I understand.
Zoran Mamdani will probably be elected on housing.
When we've tried to pin down, Senator Elizabeth Warren was on, and when we try and pin down, they give me these feel-good platitudes about empathy for people, and they don't connect the dots to what normally happens when the answer is socialism or the things that he's proposing. Not only does it not help the people normally that you're trying to help, it makes it much worse for everyone. And no one will say that because they're all worried he's going to win and they'll be on his bad side.
Well, let me be very specific. The inflation that is hurting renters and homeowners alike is also hurting the people who own and manage housing. We were founded enterprise to help local community-based nonprofits. We have hundreds of thousands of affordable units in this city that are owned and managed by great groups that are interested in just housing more people, right?
Yeah.
Guess what? Their insurance has gone up. Their costs are going up. And so we have to recognize that we have to invest in this housing and we have to be able to pay for those expenses. And so that's why I say freezing the rent is a slogan. It's not a solution. There are other things we should be focused on. Freezing the rent is just a slogan.
Well,
there's lots of other things we need to do.
We'll end on, at least your LHTC got increased in this most recent bill.
It got increased, and it's been an incredibly effective, public-private partnership for decades now that actually gets things done.
Would you help the new mayor if
I am a lifelong New Yorker who wants to see this city succeed, and we know how to solve this housing problem. It's not easy, but we should come together and do that.
All right.